Good morning. Earlier this week, I released a one-off special where I read out the PRBites newsletter, which I do is a daily newsletter that I do, and you can get that on the publicrelationspodcast.com, and you click the newsletter button. But it's a daily one that I put out, and I actually read it, and I was really surprised by how engaged people were with it. They kept listening for almost the entire way through, or at least the percentage was really high the whole way through. And I thought, okay, well, if people are interested, maybe it was a one-off. Maybe people were just curious what I was going to do. But I thought, let's do another one and see if those figures stay up, and in which case I know that you are finding it interesting. So let me read today's PR Bites newsletter, which is from Wednesday, the 10th of July. So if you're listening to this in a few days' time, it might seem a little bit out of date, but I think you still find some value in here. I always start off with the newsletter with a motivation. So the Wednesday motivation is believe you can and you're halfway there. That's from Theodore Roosevelt. Believe you can and you're halfway there. But this is what I had in it. I start off by always giving an idea about what's actually going to be in the newsletter. So Wednesday's focus was, number one, don't target your audience, target the people who influence them. Number two, what to do when a government sets up a rival organization to yours. And number three, why standing in a lift or an elevator and pressing the down button could help your well-being. All those are coming up over the next couple of minutes. Starting off with the I Spotted section, there are three stories in here. The first one was I talked about pitching measurable results, and I was discussing a pitch with a friend at an agency in the technology space last night. And we were talking about pitching some work to an organization who haven't really used PR before. And we were discussing about how to convince them of its value. And I pointed out that much of what we've talked about recently here on PR Bites, that it would be good to go in with some measurable targets to give the pitch a much better chance of succeeding. Because as we know, CMOs and product managers, as we know, are looking for specific results today rather than just sporadic coverage, which used to be enough in the past. You organize an event, everyone gets excited, and that was enough, or you get a certain number of column inches. So we talked about focusing on measurable areas, three areas: reach, sentiment, and core message alignment. So, for example, how they show an improvement by starting from a baseline that you research about an organization's position now, and then say, in our research on you, for example, you currently reach an X number of media outlets. And with our campaign, we'll increase that by, let's say, 3 outlets per month. Then you look at sentiment. So that was obviously on the baseline of just how much coverage again. Then you look at sentiment. Is it currently positive or negative about the product at the moment? The pitch then would aim to increase positive sentiment by a certain percentage. Now, there's obviously different ways of measuring this. I haven't got space to talk about it here, but there's different ways of looking at that. But you're looking at a specific sort of shift. We're going to increase it by 10% or something. And then thirdly, are people sharing the core message the organization wants to put across? If people are saying, for example, in not tech, but saying a fishing rod is too short or it breaks easily online, you want to change that narrative to the fishing rod is amazingly reliable. And again, we discuss measuring the baseline of where they are now, the kind of percentage of how many people are saying something related to the fishing rod being bad, and then the percentage of how many people we want to be saying that it's good in future, and then having that measurable thing. The goal really here was to find ways to show how PR would produce tangible, useful results for a business that would lead to increases in their bottom line. Now, while it might be daunting to stand by measurable improvements, trying to rely on just saying, we can get you more coverage is just not enough anymore, especially as we've heard in the past with the younger startups in particular, like brought up on data from Google Ads. Now, of course, you want to pick statistics that you can measure and ones that you know you can influence. There's no point in promising a campaign that can't actually shift those figures. So you need to think about, well, what figures can we actually move? What can we see as a tangible result that will help them? And we can show that also by doing this work, if we're allowed to do more work, we can move it even more. So that was the first one. I was talking to them, and we will see how their particular pitch goes. The next story was no one is watching TV anymore. As usual, if you want to get coverage, you need to know what's actually happening in the media rather than what we would like to be happening. An interesting figure I saw on ABC's Media Watch the other day said that teenagers watching free-to-air TV, that is with adverts, non-subscription or non-cable, has dropped from 75 minutes per day in 2011 to just 13 minutes in 2024. Now, there's a big debate around the world about declining numbers for free-to-air TV and whether we're going to see channels going under, which of course means fewer opportunities for placing stories. The reality, of course, is that eyeballs are online, not on TV now, and advertisers are following it in their droves. I saw some figure the other day saying TV ad spending in Australia had dropped something like 10% in the past year. And while TV still has some credibility and impact, particularly with older audiences, if your audience is not watching it, of course, it's pointless. So if a client, of course, insists and they say, I want to do TV and it doesn't work, then make it clear it was them who asked for it. And the third story, before we move on to the PR puzzle and the other parts of the newsletter, was a topic about targeting influencers, not the segments. Now, what I mean by this is you don't just target segments of your audience, you target the influencers who influence those segments. And this was actually a good reminder from an article I was reading about AI in PR News Online the other day, discussing the use of AI to monitor groups and key influencers within them. And while that article was focused on AI, the thing that stood out for me was the importance of focusing on the people who influence others. You know, we target audiences, as we know, are more segmented than ever. But instead of just focusing generally on a particular segment at a time, we want to focus on the individuals who influence that segment. But who are those people? The article talked about using AI to identify them in real time, but you can do this scrappily too. So say, for example, you look for someone on Twitter with 500 followers. That might not seem influential. But if they get significant engagement, then they might be more influential on another platform like, say, Reddit, where maybe they've got 10,000 followers or whatever. So pick a platform, any platform, identify who gets good engagement, and then find where they have the most influence. Find where they are having the most effect on that particular segment. Then focus on connecting with them. Now, there is some argument to say that it's pointless targeting big influencers, unless you have the money, of course. So don't necessarily go for the ones who have the biggest audience, but the ones you may be able to connect with who still hold more sway than targeting one individual within a segment group that you're targeting. Okay, on to our PR puzzle and our scenario. I run one of these every day of the week in the PRBites newsletter with a sort of ongoing narrative that evolves during the week. And by Wednesday, this was the situation in this week's one. This week, you've been put in charge of a brand new urban mobility app. You've launched a massive campaign on Monday, but nothing happened. So no media were interested. And then on Tuesday, there was a critical news report that said the app wasn't good enough. You actually reached out to the journalists, as we talked about yesterday in the newsletter, and started discussing the issues and how the app is evolving fast. It got them on side. You also introduced a campaign where you had users talking about the positive benefits of the app and actually acknowledging the things that weren't working and how they were really excited about the next update that was going to make things even better. But as usual with the scenarios in the PRBites newsletter, things always get worse because as you open your emails this morning, as you get into the office, you see a news story that the local government is about to release its own urban mobility app, which pretty much does what your app does. So what are you going to do as a comms PR professional to help your company who's now quaking in their boots with fear? I gave two ideas to discuss on this one. The first one was, option one, is do you say publicly that you really welcome the fact that other people are getting into this space because there is a problem that needs to be solved and you would love to work with that local government on improving their app? Or do you, number two, do you look specifically for things that differentiate your app in order to develop a completely different narrative around it? So do you say publicly you welcome the fact that they're doing this and you want to work with them? Or do you come up with a completely new narrative to differentiate your app around it? What I personally would do, I think there are two very different perspectives on these options today. And the approach largely depends on your relationship, probably with the local government. You know, if your organization is already involved in urban mobility, you probably already have contacts within the local government, whether through PR and comms or via your CEO. And it's crucial to understand if the local government is prepared to work with you on this. Because do they see you as competition, or are they likely to ignore or promote you as an alternative app? If there's a possibility of collaborating with them, then they may well be able to project you forward. The thing is that development teams, as we know, can be quite protective, and that's just a reality. If the local government has its own app, they might not want to collaborate. In that case, from a PR and comms perspective, it's going to be essential to create a separate narrative about why your app is different, what it does uniquely, who it serves differently, and how its features particularly set it apart. I think here is the example of Google Maps and Waze, which is also a sort of map app, but it has added community-style features in it. It differentiates itself, even though the core thing it's doing is the same. You know, local government comms often lack a strong narrative thrust because of the way they're organized and led, sadly, for the people in it, because they tend to have to move on fast to the next project to suit local representatives' current desires. But that means you have an opportunity to literally out-message them. Therefore, I think there's a significant opportunity here to develop a compelling story around your app, highlight its unique features and approach, continuously address specific urban mobility issues, and being that spokesperson for it in media and with influencers and online, and positioning your team as the thought leaders in that space. And by focusing on consistent storytelling and campaign efforts, I think you can effectively differentiate yourself from something that could well just really peter out because there isn't enough messaging behind it. But what do you think about that? That's my view. What do you think would be the best option? And finally, in the PRBites newsletter is the section which I always quite like as well, and that is called Chill Out, What You Yelling For? And this is all about helping us get in the right mindset for the day ahead in the world of comms. So here's some steps that you can follow along with right now because you're listening to this to help sort of calm you down. And you can use this one later on if you need to as well. Just sit comfortably in your chair if you're able to find a chair. If you're standing on the train at the moment with someone's arm up next to you, you try and avoid that and just relax for a moment and let your body just relax a little bit and just take in a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. And as you inhale deeply, just tense all the muscles in your body as tight as you can. Clench your fists and tighten your arms and legs and even your face. And hold that tension for about 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Then exhale slowly through your mouth. And imagine you're in an elevator or a lift, whatever you call it, that is gently and smoothly descending from a high floor in a building. And visualize each floor passing by, counting down from 10 to 1 as you watch each floor go down and as you release the tension in your body. And with each descending floor, just feel your muscles relax further and your body getting heavier and more relaxed. And by the time you reach the ground floor, and that's floor 1, your body should feel completely relaxed and at ease. Just take in another deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth, letting go of any remaining tension. And open your eyes if they were closed and take a moment to notice how much more relaxed you're feeling. You can do that at any time. It's a really quick one I use sometimes. That's it for today. If you know anyone that should be getting the newsletter or listening to the Public Relations Podcast, then do let them know. All the details, of course, at thepublicrelationspodcast.com. Whatever you are up to today, whatever campaigns you're working on, as always, I would love to hear about them. Let me know. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Richard Midson, Midson, Midson. And as I say, you can find all the details at publicrelationspodcast.com. Speak to you real soon. Oh, I should just say, I completely forgot about this, is that was obviously me reading aloud the PRBites newsletter. If you would like to get that, you can obviously get that on the website too. Well, that's it, isn't it? Have an awesome day. I'll speak to you soon.